Well, I suppose they're letting just anyone into first class now.
I'm sure it's just a matter of time before they start offering us complimentary peanuts.
They humiliated the nobody in seat 3A, then discovered her Medal of Honor. When Olivia Chen boarded Flight 447 in worn jeans and a faded hoodie, first-class passengers whispered about how some people didn't belong. They had no idea they were judging a Medal of Honor recipient fighting battles they couldn't imagine. Flight 447 hummed with the particular tension that expensive airfare creates. Leather seats arranged like tiny thrones where passengers performed wealth through designer handbags and subtle dismissals. The cabin felt like a social ecosystem where net worth determined oxygen allocation, where first-class travelers measured their importance by how effectively they could make others feel inadequate. Outside, afternoon clouds stretched endlessly, a vast canvas where heroes once wrote their legends in contrails and courage. Olivia Chen settled into seat 3A in faded Levi's and a Georgetown hoodie that had survived better days. Her boarding pass, earned through military frequent flyer miles, accumulated over 8 years of service. At 31, she moved with careful precision that spoke of recent physical therapy. Her left knee still stiff from reconstructive surgery, her right shoulder bearing invisible scars from ejection seat trauma. What her fellow passengers couldn't see were the battles etched into her quiet demeanor. 14 months recovering from injuries sustained when her F-22 was shot down over Syria. 6 months relearning to walk without a pronounced limp. And 8 months of therapy learning to exist in a world that briefly celebrated her Medal of Honor ceremony before moving on to other news. Captain Olivia "Ghost" Chen was public record, her heroism documented and honored. But the woman rebuilding her life was fighting to become more than her service record. Her challenge wasn't financial. Disability benefits and aviation consulting provided comfortable stability. Her battle was existential. How do you connect with civilians when your defining moment happened in classified airspace most Americans would never understand? How do you build relationships when small talk feels trivial compared to life or death decisions? She was fighting to exist as a complete person rather than a symbol frozen in time. The judgment began subtly, as these things do in polite society. Margaret Whitmore, whose pharmaceutical heiress status came with its own brand of entitlement, spoke just loudly enough for her voice to carry, "I suppose frequent flyer programs really have changed. You see such diversity in first class these days." Her husband Charles nodded absently, more interested in his tablet than his wife's social commentary. But Robert Sterling, investment banker and chronic insecurity masked as aggression, caught Margaret's meaning immediately. "Standards definitely aren't what they used to be," he murmured, making an elaborate show of checking his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars. Some travelers seem to have trouble understanding appropriate attire for premium service. Olivia had survived SAM sites with less emotional impact than these passive-aggressive salvos. In her squadron, respect was earned through skill under pressure and mutual dependence. Here, it was purchased with platinum cards and inherited stock portfolios. She settled into her window seat and watched clouds that once served as her battlefield. Olivia's approach was pure military doctrine. Assess the tactical situation, identify potential threats, maintain mission security. The hostile social environment required patience and discipline, qualities she'd developed during months of physical rehabilitation where progress was measured in degrees of mobility rather than mission completions. She observed her fellow passengers with the same analytical precision she'd once used for threat assessment. Margaret, status insecurity masked as superiority, using class distinction to validate her inherited worth. Robert, compensating for deeper inadequacies through aggressive displays of financial success. Charles, conflict avoidance learned through years of marital diplomacy. "Everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about," she whispered, a therapeutic mantra that helped her process civilian interactions. These passengers were engaged in their own warfare, psychological battles where diminishing others provided temporary elevation of self-worth. Flight attendant Maria Santos treated Olivia with professional courtesy, clearly curious about the contrast between her casual appearance and first-class accommodations, but too well trained to comment directly. Olivia's first attempt at normalizing civilian interaction came during beverage service. She requested coffee, black, no additives, and offered genuine thanks that seemed to catch Maria off guard. "Business or pleasure?" Maria asked, deploying the standard conversation starter. "Consulting," Olivia replied carefully. Defense contractor work was technically accurate. She advised military training programs on combat stress management. "Heading home to Arlington?" Margaret's voice sliced through their exchange with practiced precision. "Maria, when you have a moment, could we discuss the wine selection? Those of us who actually appreciate premium service would value your expertise." The comment was calculated to establish hierarchy while implying Olivia's unworthiness for such attention. But Olivia absorbed it with the same composure she'd once maintained during missile lock warnings. "Everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about," she reminded herself, though Margaret's battle appeared to be against basic human kindness. The social warfare was escalating predictably. The passive aggression intensified during meal service. When Olivia politely declined wine, medication interactions from her ongoing treatment made alcohol inadvisable, Robert Sterling seized the tactical opportunity. Probably more of a domestic beer person, he stage whispered to Margaret, who responded with that particular laugh wealthy people used to wound without appearing overtly cruel. "Or perhaps budget consciousness," Margaret added delicately. "Wine pairings can be quite expensive for those unaccustomed to genuine luxury." But Maria observed details others missed. Olivia's hands remained steady despite the verbal assault, her breathing controlled, her posture alert, yet relaxed. These weren't reactions of someone intimidated. These were responses of someone who'd faced genuine threats and developed unshakable composure. "The meal presentation is beautiful," Olivia told Maria quietly. "Thank you for your attention to everyone's comfort." Her graciousness in the face of calculated cruelty seemed to affect Maria, who began providing extra consideration to Olivia's needs while maintaining professional neutrality. Other passengers began aligning themselves in the unspoken conflict. Some joined Margaret's whispered campaign, emboldened by group dynamics and the safety of collective cruelty. Others appeared uncomfortable with the targeted harassment, but lacked sufficient courage to risk becoming alternate targets. Tommy Morrison, 16 and traveling with his grandmother Eleanor, kept studying Olivia with growing recognition. Something about her bearing, her particular brand of calm alertness, triggered memories of a family visit to Arlington National Cemetery where they'd attended a Medal of Honor ceremony. "Grandma," he whispered, She looks familiar, like from something important on TV. But Eleanor was too focused on avoiding Margaret's attention to engage seriously with the question. She understood how quickly mob psychology could shift targets, how today's observer could become tomorrow's victim. Robert Sterling, meanwhile, had begun making pointed comments about appropriate standards and maintaining exclusivity, his insecurity demanding constant validation through others' diminishment. The confrontation peaked when Margaret finally addressed Olivia directly. During her return from the lavatory, she paused beside seat 3A with the confidence of someone accustomed to unchallenged authority. "Excuse me, but I believe there might be some confusion regarding your seating assignment. This cabin maintains certain expectations." Conversation stopped. This was Margaret's moment of social triumph, exposing the fraud, restoring proper hierarchical order to their premium environment. She anticipated embarrassment, possibly tears, certainly capitulation to superior status. Instead, Olivia looked up from her paperback, a biography of test pilot Chuck Yeager, with eyes that had seen hostile territory from 6 miles altitude, and smiled with kindness that seemed to stop Margaret's circulation. "Everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about," Olivia said quietly, her voice carrying authority earned through experience rather than inheritance. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm exactly where I belong." The response was so unexpected, delivered with such gentle certainty, that Margaret found herself speechless for perhaps the first time in decades. As they approached the eastern seaboard, Tommy Morrison finally connected his nagging recognition with specific memory. During that cemetery visit, his grandfather had pointed out a young woman receiving the Medal of Honor, talking about extraordinary heroism and sacrifice most Americans would never understand. The facial structure, the bearing, the unshakable composure under social fire, it was definitely her. Captain Olivia Chen, shot down over enemy territory, continued fighting despite severe injuries, saved 3 fellow airmen before her own rescue. Tommy pulled out his phone, searching carefully. There it was. News footage from the White House ceremony, the same quiet strength in her expression, the same way of carrying herself as if constantly prepared for anything. They'd been mocking a genuine American hero for 5 hours, someone who'd literally bled for their freedom while they complained about wine selections and cabin privileges. The irony was staggering, the cruelty unconscionable. Tommy stared across the aisle, moral clarity dawned breaking across his teenage consciousness. The medical emergency began when Eleanor Morrison collapsed while returning from the lavatory, her body hitting the carpeted aisle with a sickening thud. Her face had gone gray, breathing shallow and irregular, one hand clutched to her chest in the universal gesture of cardiac distress. "Medical emergency in first class," Maria announced immediately, following standard protocol while passengers pressed back against their seats, more concerned with avoiding inconvenience than offering assistance. Margaret's immediate response revealed her true character. "Can't this be handled in coach? We're trying to enjoy our premium service." Robert Sterling was already on his phone, demanding flight diversion information so he could calculate the impact on his evening schedule. The same passengers who'd spent hours demonstrating their imagined superiority were now displaying their actual character when faced with genuine crisis. But Olivia was already moving, her military medical training overriding civilian social dynamics. She knelt beside Eleanor with fluid precision, her fingers finding pulse points while her eyes assessed skin color, breathing patterns, pupil response, rapid diagnostic protocols that had kept combat casualties alive in field conditions where mistakes meant body bags. Cardiac event, probable myocardial infarction, she announced with clinical authority that cut through the cabin's rising panic. "Are you medical personnel?" Maria asked, already retrieving the emergency medical kit, while other flight attendants managed passenger crowd control. "Military combat medic certified, current in advanced life support," Olivia replied, not entirely accurate but close enough for crisis management. Her combat medical training was extensive. She'd saved more lives with emergency medicine than most doctors encountered in residency programs. "Tommy, I need you to help position your grandmother. Elevate her legs approximately 30 degrees. As she worked, her complete transformation became visible to every watching passenger. Gone was the quiet woman they'd been systematically destroying, replaced by someone who belonged in trauma centers and battlefield medical tents. Her hands moved with practiced competence, checking vitals, administering supplemental oxygen, maintaining airway patency, with the confidence of someone who'd performed identical procedures under enemy fire. "Should we request priority landing?" The captain's voice crackled through the intercom, clearly monitoring the developing situation. "Affirmative," Olivia responded with crisp military bearing. "Patient requires immediate cardiac intervention upon arrival." Margaret watched in stunned recognition as the woman she'd been attacking for hours took command of a life-threatening situation with the same composure she'd shown while absorbing their calculated cruelties. That's when Tommy Morrison found his voice, moral outrage overcoming teenage social anxiety. "She's Medal of Honor, everyone. She's a real war hero." The words detonated through the medical emergency like a flashbang grenade. Every passenger turned to stare at Olivia, still kneeling beside Eleanor, maintaining professional focus on patient care while her true identity exploded through their consciousness. "Captain Olivia Chen," Tommy continued, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent cabin. "I saw her at Arlington Cemetery, shot down over Syria, kept fighting with broken ribs and internal bleeding, saved 3 other pilots before her own rescue." Robert Sterling's phone slipped from nerveless fingers. Margaret's expensive composure cracked completely as she realized the magnitude of their collective cruelty. They'd been systematically attacking someone who'd literally sacrificed blood for their freedom, while they complained about wine pairings and seating arrangements. "Everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about," Olivia said quietly, never breaking her visual assessment of Eleanor's improving vital signs. As Olivia continued monitoring Eleanor's stabilizing condition, the cabin atmosphere underwent complete transformation. Passengers who'd spent hours performing imagined superiority were witnessing actual leadership. Someone employing real skills to preserve an actual life rather than playing social games for psychological validation. "Ma'am," Maria said respectfully, "I can patch you through to medical control if you need consultation." "That would be helpful," Olivia nodded, accepting the communication handset without interrupting her visual assessment of Eleanor's breathing patterns. "Medical control. This is Captain Chen with patient update. 74-year-old female, suspected acute MI, currently stable on supplemental oxygen. Vitals improving, but requires immediate cardiac evaluation upon landing." Her calm professionalism, precise medical terminology, seamless coordination of patient care with flight operations. It demonstrated crisis leadership that made every passenger reconsider their assumptions about worth, value, and genuine authority. Captain Chen, Medical Control responded through the cabin speakers, confirming your military medical background. What's your current certification status? Combat Medic qualified, current CPR and ACLS certified through consulting work with defense training programs, Olivia answered while adjusting Eleanor's oxygen flow rate. I've maintained medical currency for aviation safety consulting. Tommy watched his grandmother's color improve under Olivia's skilled care, understanding with crystal clarity that the woman his family had ignored, the woman other passengers had systematically degraded, was literally saving his grandmother's life using expertise earned through military service to their country. Outstanding, Captain. Your emergency management is textbook. We have cardiac specialists standing by at Reagan National. The entire cabin could hear the professional respect in the medical controller's voice, recognition that transcended civilian military boundaries. Margaret Whitmore finally located her voice, though it emerged as barely a whisper. I had absolutely no idea. About what? Olivia asked gently, maintaining focus on Eleanor while acknowledging Margaret's presence with characteristic grace. About who you are, what you've accomplished, what you've sacrificed. Margaret's carefully constructed social armor was disintegrating completely. We treated you with inexcusable cruelty, and you're a decorated war hero. I'm someone who learned that everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about, Olivia replied, checking Eleanor's pulse rhythm again. Including you, Mrs. Whitmore. Whatever internal struggles drive you to diminish others, those battles are real too, even if they're different from mine. Robert Sterling sat motionless, watching someone demonstrate authentic leadership while his own behavior over the previous 5 hours replayed in mortifying detail. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open, focusing gradually on Olivia's concerned face. Angel? She whispered weakly, her voice barely audible above the aircraft's ambient noise. Just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right training. Olivia smiled warmly. Your grandson Tommy recognized me. He's incredibly proud of you, Mrs. Morrison. She saved 3 other pilots when her plane was shot down, Tommy said, tears streaming down his face. And now she's saving you, Grandma, even after everyone. The impact rippled through the cabin like shock waves, passengers realizing they'd witnessed not merely medical competence, but moral courage. Olivia had absorbed hours of calculated cruelty without defending herself, then immediately employed her capabilities to help someone from the group that had been systematically attacking her. As Flight 447 touched down at Reagan National, paramedics boarded immediately. Olivia provided comprehensive medical handoff, transferred patient care seamlessly, then quietly returned to her seat while Eleanor was transported to waiting cardiac specialists. Captain Chen, the lead paramedic called back before departing, exceptional work under challenging conditions. You undoubtedly saved her life today. The cabin sat in humbled silence as Olivia simply acknowledged the compliment with a modest nod, then returned to her Chuck Yeager biography as if preserving human life was merely routine Tuesday activity. But every passenger understood they'd witnessed something extraordinary. Not just medical competence, but a demonstration of character that revealed their own behavior as petty, cruel, and fundamentally misguided. Everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about. And sometimes those battles create people who save others despite having every moral justification not to. As passengers deplaned, Margaret approached Olivia with tears streaming down her face, her expensive composure completely abandoned. "I owe you an apology that transcends adequacy. You saved Eleanor's life after I treated you with unconscionable cruelty." "Everyone's fighting battles you know nothing about," Olivia said with characteristic grace, shouldering her worn carry-on bag. "Now you understand one of mine. But you were fighting your own battles too. Maybe this experience can help you recognize and address them constructively." Tommy embraced her fiercely. "Thank you for saving Grandma, and thank you for showing us what real strength actually looks like." Months later, Margaret would volunteer with veteran transition programs, finally understanding that human worth couldn't be measured through material possessions or social positioning. Tommy would pursue military medicine, inspired by meeting someone who transformed service skills into civilian life-saving capabilities. And Maria Santos would share this story for years about serving coffee to a Medal of Honor recipient who taught an entire cabin about invisible battles and visible grace. Sometimes the people we judge most harshly are fighting battles that protected our freedom while we obsessed over thread counts and wine vintages. The strongest people are usually fighting battles you know nothing about. And sometimes those battles were fought in hostile skies above enemy territory by heroes who return home to purchase plane tickets with military miles, carrying classified courage and public recognition with equal humility.